You're listening to the Serial Entrepreneur Club Hour on Startup Club. By the way, we have almost 850,000 members on Startup Club. And if you're not already a member of Startup Club, please click on the green house above. Gary, I know you're brand new to Clubhouse, but you can also be a member to Startup Club as well by joining it. And you can see Gary's profile picture. He's very, very new to Clubhouse, which is great to have new members on. We are going to talk today about my favorite type of business. It's my favorite investments. It's my favorite type of company. They're recurring revenue businesses, ARR, and I call them digital cash registers. So why doesn't everybody just launch their own digital cash register? I mean, that's the question we're going to ask. We're trying to figure out, what it takes to launch a subscription business, a business that can keep making money every single month over and over again. So, Michelle, welcome. Peter, welcome. Gary, welcome. Jeff, welcome. It's going to be a fun afternoon today. Uh, Jeff or Michelle, any thoughts about the show today before we get into it with Peter and Gary?
Yeah, I would say, subscription businesses, I know Colin said monthly, but it could be annual, it could be more. And there's so many, could be software as a service or just, so a virtual product or even a physical product might be called a replenishment program. So there's so many business models and it can be so extremely lucrative, but we're going to get into how it can be extremely difficult too to break even and be profitable on these. So
And,
back
and,
to
and Michelle, why is a subscription business something that a startup should consider? Because of the big RR, the double R, and the double R is not Rolls Royce, but maybe it could lead to a Rolls Royce. The double R is recurring revenue. A subscription business, if you can do it successfully, provides predictable recurring revenue, which is enormously powerful to build and grow and scale your business.
Well, that's awesome. And if you're in the audience and you're interested in this topic and you want to ask a question of our two guests, Gary and Peter, or ourselves, Jeff, myself, or Michelle, if you'd like to ask a question, please raise your hands. It's going to be an interactive afternoon. I can tell you this is a phenomenal business model. I'll kick it off with you, Peter. Peter, can you talk a little bit about what you do and when you started? Give us a little bit of history, and let's not get into the KPIs and all the other stuff. We'll ask questions about that later. But just give us a little bit of your background, Peter.
Yeah, sure. First of all, I'll just reiterate: there's nothing like a subscription business, because, as Colin said originally, they're bloody hard to get to a certain scale, but once you get there, you just got this revenue sweeping through. So what we do, I guess in 2015, I started this business, and well, I guess it was even a year or two before that, before we started building a product. But we do, we're an enterprise SaaS business, so we focus on large organizations greater than $100 million, and we provide them a digital control system to help their teams manage their domains, their DNS, and their certs. So we're also a corporate registrar, but we've integrated this control system into DNS providers and as certificate authorities. So our difference is really, we combine workflow, integration, audit history to bring all these assets and all these aspects of the DNS into a single system as a single pane of glass. So it's been a long road, and one comment I'd say to people that if you're thinking of starting a business to go after enterprise, be prepared for a long cycle. But it's been great, but we really deliver value and benefits around helping companies improve their security and their digital footprint, compliance over change management, and performance as well. Because if you're operating your DNS well, you're going to improve your SEO and your digital performance. On the other side of performance, because we've got a very simple to use system, we help teams improve their performance and their ability to execute. We really just make it really easy for these teams, And in turn, what that has the effect of doing is reducing their total cost of ownership, both in people and also by consolidating into a single platform and vendor. It makes it easier for them. And
And
how
Peter,
we do
Peter, when
how
did
we
you
do,
start?
yeah,
When did you start this business?
2015. First customer came
2015.
on in 2015.
Oh, that's awesome. Let's move to Gary for the intro. Gary, I know you're brand new on Clubhouse. You also run a digital platform. Can you talk a little bit about that, your background, and when you started as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I literally just joined Clubhouse. So, as you can see, I don't got a picture. I just finished kind of signing up. Didn't even know this existed. Very, very cool. Little bit of background. So, my background is engineering, and uh, way back when I've always run product companies, and this was before the whole SaaS model. But about 10 years ago, I started a services business, and it was in mobile. And at the time, mobile was really hot. So ran a mobile services business, was going great. But as I was doing service business, I started realizing, man, this is a lot of work. Like every month, you got to get new work, and it's not recurring, and it's just a constant grind. And I realized this is does not have longevity. Like I need to get back into products. And this was at the time when SaaS was starting to become a thing. So we started looking at, on the side, can we kind of build a product? Can we get out of services? And around 2015, 2016, we had an opportunity around the management of safety data sheets. So we had a customer we had done some work for that was having issues with managing their safety data sheets. Now, there's a lot of companies out there doing this, but this was a school board, and we took a look at what was out there and what they were using, and there really was a gap. There was a need for these school boards that wasn't being met by the products out there, and they were paying money for products that really didn't work for them. So we decided this was the opportunity we're going to take, and we kind of built out this product, and we built out a SaaS model around this. And we got that customer, we got a couple of others, and it kind of was very slow. But in the start of 2021, we decided that's it. We're going full on into this. We're dumping services. We're going to become a SaaS business, and that's what we've done. So we really again focused on the education market, and that's expanded out into counties, kind of public sector. And how we differentiate ourselves is that those sectors have a different need than the products that are out there, and we've been able to differentiate ourselves and be able to quickly start generating revenue. Now, I think one thing to remember with a SaaS model is it is a bit of a slow grind, right? But um, uh, Peter mentioned enterprise. Enterprise is a tough sale. Public sector is also a long sale.
Mhm.
But when you get a sale, it's a lot. You have it for a long time. So your contracts are typically 3, 5, 7 years long, and they really don't want to move. So if you're providing a great service along with a product, you're entrenched. So once you get that revenue, you're going to be in there for a long time. So it may be slow to build up, but your turnover is very low.
Yeah, and if you're in
Absolutely.
the audience right now, and you think this topic's interesting, please share the room with Clubhouse. It's that second button on the left at the bottom of your screen. I just shared the room. It's going to be an excellent hour, and I know we're going to learn a lot about subscriptions and the whole model and what it takes to launch it. And if you have a question for Gary or Peter, please raise your hand as well. It's going to be fun. I will say that it's interesting to hear both of you speak about the long sales cycle to signing up enterprise clients at Hostopia, my prior company. I think it was up to 2 years before we actually got our sales site. So we actually got the contract. And at .club, it was B2B, but it was $10 a year, and it was 2 minutes before we would sell the next domain name. So in some ways, it was a lot more enjoyable because every hour we'd be seeing, oh, we signed 100 names in the last hour. Oh, we signed 50 names in the last hour. It was much more gratifying in some ways. But when you have those big contracts, and there's a lot of work to close one of them. It takes a lot of time. It can sometimes be, you really have to keep a strong mental state. Peter?
Yeah. Oh boy, do you ever. Our sales cycle, like we've had guys who have been 3 years in the sales cycle. I've had other ones that, two that had closed within 60 days. So there's sort of this broad perspective, but you have to be prepared to do that. So, we are really, we are very much a consultative sale. So we give them content and value from that content, build up trust that we know what we're talking about, and also needing to sort of address a buyer committee. I can talk about it later, but we've got different types of personas that we pursue. The sponsor, decision making, and end users, and inside an enterprise, you've really got to convince every one of these people. But then to Gary's point, once you get them, and they're happy, they're not going anywhere. And I'll talk about negative churn later in KPIs, but the whole premise here is you get them and then you grow them, and they're buying services that they need, and you're increasing your MRR with every client every month.
All right. So I see, Colin, we have some people already up here on the stage. I think we should go right to the audience.
Sounds good.
So let's go to Asia K. And before you start, Asia, I just want to mention, Gary and Peter and Colin and myself and Jeff, we're experts in B2B. But don't forget, there are a lot of consumer applications like streaming and like physical goods. So please feel free to ask your question. Asia, the mic is
Oh,
yours.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
All right. Excellent. I'm glad to be here. I love this topic, and thanks for having this space. The subscription startup. What I just gathered from Michelle was that something to consider is look at your content as your asset. That is your intellectual property, and that in itself has value that somebody is going to be well, they'll put it in their budget to subscribe to you every month because you have people stream Hulu and Amazon and Netflix. It's such a great business, and that it's nice that you can offer advice for smaller competitors, because that's who, in a sense, what feels like you are competing against if you are to be doing a streaming service like something like a Netflix or Hulu. Like how can you become the little Hulu subscription? Is what it makes
Yeah.
me feel like. You
This
offer
is
help with
Gary.
that.
Yeah, I think this is Gary. I think the biggest thing is um, finding a niche and differentiating yourself. So I'm not in consumer, we're B2B, but in my space, there are very, very large competitors. And we've been able to take business away from them because instead of focusing broadly and trying to be everything for everyone, our approach was to take a look at the market. Let's find some verticals that we can play in and we can differentiate ourselves. And I think it's the same with consumer content. If you take a look at TikTok, when TikTok started, how did they differentiate themselves? Well, they came up with this idea of a short little video, and everything's this short little content burst. All the now obviously they're huge, but when they started, they were small, and then all these other companies are trying to emulate them because they see the power of that. So I think taking a look at your content and how can you differentiate and make it different than your competitors, and kind of you need to have something you can hang your hat on that can differentiate you, so that whether it's an enterprise sale or a consumer
Oh,
that you're trying to entice,
yeah.
you have to kind of show them this is why I'm different and better.
So, and when you say enterprise sale or consumer, so enterprise sale, that's, business to business, and then
Yes.
consumer, you're selling to the people. The thing that struck me about what you first said is that they have to decide one thing, that bite-sized thing that they do, like that they offer, like the ball that they have. There's
Right.
no factors about the ball yet. Like it could be any kind of ball, but first things first, it's ball. And then maybe
Yeah.
next it's a red ball, and then next it's a blue
Yeah.
ball, depending on who your niche customer is. When you
Right.
mentioned TikTok, I am being told that there are um, different ways that TikTok markets depending on location of the user. So in China, as opposed to, well, in US, we know what it is. It's funny, it's random, kind of stupid. They have more, their audience wants to see, or is forced to see, kids doing good in school. Like, how do you be a better, the smart people? So
Yeah.
that's huge what you do, because it really forces people to choose, like, okay, what do I support in like the future of what these kids are watching?
Yeah, I think when you're looking at consumer content, definitely um, region matters, right? Content is very different in the US to Europe to Australia to China, et cetera. So definitely, if you're looking at a global consumer platform, you do have to take into account um, what each region would like. But the one thing I would say is, as a startup, you have to be flexible and you have to be willing to zig and zag, because uh, what you may think is your differentiator and what is really working, if you're monitoring your content and how it's being ingested, and what's kind of, if we're talking consumer content, how long is someone staying on, those types of things. Um, uh, you may find that X was what's driving my product, but it's really Y. And you have to be able to zig quickly and start focusing on Y. And I think that's one thing that a successful startup has to be able to do is you have to be able to zig and zag, because sometimes what you believe actually changes once you start taking a look at the data of how your content is being consumed and used.
Oh,
I think
so
it's
that really, that's, I can, if I may respond, it's okay.
go ahead.
Because it made me think of something like, it's cool. Okay. So with the data and how it's being used, that might be smart to put a good item in your budget for user experience. So having the tools that track, okay, how long is this person on the site? Why did they, when they clicked on this button, where did they go next? What problems did they have when they encountered this situation? The tools that provide that service sound to be a great value, because it
Yeah,
seems
I
that
think what
it
you're
Yeah.
seems
finding
right. The
there is
business, go ahead. So yeah.
you're getting into a niche, and I think that, Gary, what you've talked about, this sort of laser focus, and yeah, you've got large competitors, uh, but yet you focus on one particular segment of the SDS market, schools and municipalities and counties, and you do it better than anyone else. Peter, you are also in domain management and you've got massive competitors. Can you talk a little bit about that laser focus?
Yeah, no, very much so. I think Gary hit it. Finding that gap, I call it the hole, right? So, what is it that we do better than everybody else? We sort of pin in on that, on the security of the infrastructure. There's lots of other things we could be doing, but that's really what we do, and to make that easy for teams to do it. And when we get into the valid or the raising money side, That's going to be critical if you want to raise money. You need to demonstrate that you've got that. So all of what we do in terms of how we engage and try to get people to come and have a look at us and see why they might want to move, we just produce a ton of content. So whether it's articles, white papers, webinars, we try to engage people there to say, well, these guys are doing something different, and this is something that we need that nobody else is doing.
Peter, what I wanted
Think,
to add too, Colin, real quick is when you think about a subscription-based business, understanding who your target audience is
Yeah,
means the size of the audience doesn't matter as it does in other business models. For
yeah,
example, if you're building a business based on an advertising business model, then the size of your audience is everything. Then all you're trying to
yeah,
do is reach as many people as possible because you need those eyeballs to drive any meaningful advertising revenue. But when you switch your model to a subscription based business, the number of paid customers you need is what's important. And that number of paid customers is a fraction, sometimes even a fraction of a fraction of the size of customer base that an advertising based business would need. So you need to understand, who's your target audience, how big is that, and more importantly, the way your business is operating, what you expect to make as a profit, how you expect to expand and scale, how many customers do you need to get to break even? How many customers you
right.
need to meet your annual revenue goals? How many customers do you need to grow by each year to meet your growth goals? And it's in many respects, easier to break it down when you know you have a subscription service because you can actually multiply user by number and know your revenue amounts, which is much harder to do in an advertising model.
Yeah, very much. And like we employ an ABM strategy, so account-based marketing, where we have our target list. We generally, we know what companies want to go after. And then we say, okay, well, who are the people in those companies and what personas are they? As I mentioned before, sponsor, decision maker, end users. So we're trying to engage with those folks to help them understand how we can make their lives easier, and that's much easier. And as a focus, however you define your ideal customer, whether it's by vertical niche or by the makeup of that customer, or how many domains or what kind of digital business they operate, allows you to focus much more to build it up, and you don't need many. Thank goodness.
it's amazing to see how many platforms to nowhere that I've seen out there. That people have built these platforms and yet don't have any users. If you build it, they won't come.
No.
Gary, how do you get customers? Gary, how do you get customers? And Peter talked a little bit about webinars. You talked a little bit about a couple of the ideas, but I know you do RFPs. Like, do you have some tips and tricks of how you actually get customers to your platform?
Yeah, so since we've got a very specific vertical we're targeting, it it makes it a lot easier to farm, right? Because uh, every state has X number of they're either called school boards, school districts, school divisions. Every state will call it differently, and every state will be set up different. Some are independent, where every school board is buying on its own, and in some states they have groups of school boards that are together, maybe 10, 15 school boards that buy as one. So really what we're doing is we're getting those lists of all the school boards in Utah, Texas,
Yeah.
etc., and then figuring out who the correct person is. And depending on the size of the school, it'll be a different person, right? So in my world, the bigger boards have risk managers, and the risk managers are responsible for safety data sheets and a bunch of other things. The great thing about my space is OSHA, which is a government organization, mandates that everyone has to, if you have hazardous chemicals, you have to have safety data sheets and you have to manage them. So this is a problem that all school boards have to do, and they have to do it whether they like it or not. If not, they'll get fined by OSHA. So there's an absolute need. So it's not like I'm calling on someone and they're going to say, oh, we don't do that. Well, you have to. Either you're doing it manually or you're doing it electronically. And since there are a lot of players in this space, what ends up happening is what we're really trying to do is just build out that calendar of when is your product coming up, either for renewal or RFP. And again, depending on the size of the organization, some require that it has to go out to bid and others don't. But our key is just knowing, okay, well, this company's contract's coming up in 2 years. So we want to be contacting them 6 months before them and start trying to get a demo with them, show our product, show how we're different, why we're better, and go from there. So a lot of times it's rare when we call someone, although it happens, we call on someone and they're like, oh yeah, I need that, or I still do that manually, or my contract's due in 2 months. Most of the time it's, oh, I've still got a contract for a year or 2 years. And it's just building up that database of dates to get back to people. And that's what we're really focused on and doing. We did some trade shows early on, uh, and not the right focus. There are the right trade shows, so we're going to start looking at those. But we thought, okay, yeah, safety. We're in the safety space, right? Safety hazardous chemicals. So we're going to go to these tons of shows they had around safety, for school boards and so forth. And it turned out it's all police officers and dealing with security and safety and active shooters, and it's a shame that that's our world now with schools, but unfortunately that's a big part of it. So we weren't quite right in those, so we kind of stopped and we're resetting and looking for the right kinds of trade shows that we can go to and start seeing people at shows. So that's
That's
another
so
venue that we're going to
interesting.
be.
Mm. I
Yeah,
just
one
wanted,
other
go ahead.
thing.
I'll ask later.
Yeah, no problem. One other thing I've done, Gary, in a similar space, Walters Kluwer, which is a massive publisher of, legal documents, is
Right.
we always try to get in the reviews. All of, for example, we are targeting this particular case CPAs or trust administrators. What we would also do is find those publications. Typically, they do annual reviews of products, and that ended up for us being a phenomenal lead source. If we could get ranked, hopefully as number one in those kind of publications, then we would oftentimes see, an onslaught of leads, because in that industry, accuracy and reputation and the whole fear cell are really, really
Right.
valuable.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And a lot of those, um, I've done those before in another space, and a lot of, let's be honest, a lot are paid opportunities. You pay them enough money, you get ranked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, so a lot of times, but the users don't know that, right? The users look at that and say, "Oh, wow, they're ranked top five." What they don't know is you actually paid money to get that spot.
Yeah.
But it does work.
But
Yeah,
that's that.
Asia, I do want to get to you again. We'll come back to you, but Jasmine, you've been waiting very patiently. Do you have a question or a thought about this topic that you wanted to share with us?
Thanks, Colin, for having me up on stage. I have both a question and a contribution, but let me do an introduction first. My name is Jasmine Onyuku. I am a business consultant here in Canada. My company at Peak Perfectly currently works with startups. We work to ensure that startup founders can build their companies with less stress, less cost, and less gray hairs. So we work to support them well, like the McKinsey and Co, but for startups and sometimes scale ups. So I just wanted to add to the conversation on recurring models. And I saw a question in the comment. I think it was by, I can't remember the name of the person, and I know that most of the time startups and businesses, they misconstrue or they kind of misinterpret the different types of recurring models. So you have the subscription, which is when people pay to consume recurring value. Then there's also membership, which is totally different from subscription. With a membership, people don't just pay to consume value, they pay to engage with the value, they pay to engage with fellow consumers, they pay to be in a community essentially. So if people don't understand the difference, they go about approaching them wrongly, because the sales, branding, customer retention, and all of those approaches differ across these two recurring models. So I just said to drop that as a thought. And I'd also love to hear what the other experts have to say about that. Talking about business models in general, this is another topic. Many people talk SaaS, software as a service, but there are other technology models that do exist in the marketplace. And I'd love to hear how those can be leveraged in for recurring models as well. So when you talk about technology business models, you would have SaaS, which is a very popular one. You'd also have marketplace as a service. There are many entrepreneurs I know who are trying to build marketplaces. They don't have a software per se, but they have an idea to bring a two-sided market together, or two ends of a market together, to foster interactions and value exchange. There are a host of other models across the world today. So I'd love to hear some thoughts on other business models, not just SaaS, because when you think technology, people just go SaaS, they start thinking SaaS, but there are other ways that we could create value that does not have to be about a software. It could be data, it could be a marketplace, it could be a platform. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on those. I'm done. Thanks.
Anybody want to take that? I know we've had on the gentleman who did BoxyCharm, and they did the box of the month type concepts, and he sold his company for $500 million. So you're right; it doesn't have to be SaaS. There are so many subscription models. In fact, you might even have a product-based company. I know we do at Paw.com. That Jeff's the CMO of Paw.com, and we have been attempting to start up some of the subscription models around nutraceuticals for animals. But so if you have an existing products company, you can actually think about launching services. Any thoughts from Jeff?
Well,
I was
I
just
think
wondering, Colin.
oh, sorry,
Go
go ahead,
ahead,
Jimmy.
Jeff.
I was just going to say that anything that's replenishable, any product
Yeah.
that is replenishable is ideal for a subscription model. I subscribe to two different coffee subscriptions because I drink a lot of coffee, and instead of buying it every time in the supermarket, it shows up. But when you think about your product, just think, is it replenishable? I subscribe to a sock of the month club, one of the .club companies, because socks wear out pretty frequently. So getting a new pair of socks every month, 12 pairs of socks a year, not a problem because you wear through them. So any product
Yeah.
that is replenishable is ideal for a subscription model.
Yeah, I was just going to say something similar, Jeff, around, was it Shave Club? The guys that
Yeah, the Dollar
disposable
Shave Club.
razors.
Yep.
Dollar Shave, yeah. So anything to be, the fact it's consumable means that you need a fresh one. I was also wondering about, sort of when you were speaking, Jasmine, I was sort of thinking about the brokerage side, right? Or how do you bring two parties together? So, if you're in, there's lots of sort of analogous ones to this, where you create communities. Bright Talk is something we subscribe to. They're providing a place for us to put up our content, and they've got an audience of people seeking content in our space. So I think there's lots of different opportunities, but they all come down to that same principle of, the consumer pays an amount of money per month or per year to be part of this group or this service.
Yeah, and I think if you really try to step outside of the box of what your business is and what you're so entrenched in, you'll find oftentimes you
A
can find
subscription
these recurring
business, whether
revenue
it's SaaS or not,
models.
is an equation. And that equation is, what's my
What
cost of lifetime value per subscriber? And obviously, I'm going to want to have a positive number when you compare. But
You're
a
breaking
Colin,
up
you're
a bit,
breaking
Colin.
up. We're having a hard
Yeah, I think you're breaking
time.
up, Colin.
So,
churn rates,
well,
the number of users you're dropping per month, And then ultimately, now you've got these KPIs and everything. Jeff mentioned it. Everything's very predictable. At Dot Club, it was amazing to see how it came in place. Where we were at the very beginning, we came out pretty strong, and then it was slow, and then it began to pick up over time and accelerate and become very profitable. Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I don't think he
Oh,
realizes he's
can you
jumping.
repeat the question? I'm sorry. I didn't get it personally, but go ahead with your answer if you can repeat it after your answer.
Or
Thank you.
Peter and then Gary?
Yeah, Colin, you're breaking up. It was hard to really get at what you're talking about, except for I think you're transitioning into KPIs around the cost of acquisition. So if your cost of acquisition per client or subscriber, that needs to turn a positive positive ROI at the end of the day. So which is all different. Our clients can spend over $100,000 a year with us, so we can spend quite a bit of money to get an individual client. Where Dot Club, you need, you're getting whatever the dollar was, 10, $20. So you can't quite spend as much. I think that was the basis of it, but you're breaking up there a bit.
Yeah,
This is
thank you. Sorry about that. It was just all about an equation and
Yeah,
the cost of acquisition versus lifetime value of a
right.
customer.
Exactly.
And I do
Exactly.
know that at Dot Club, we would spend about 2 to 3 years to acquire a customer, and yet it was still profitable to us. So 2 to 3 years of that
Yeah.
customer's revenue was our acquisition cost. When you think of acquisition, acquiring new customers, Gary and Peter, can you talk to us a little bit about you know, what's the investment you make into acquire these customers? And base it on not dollar wise, but based on the time they're subscribers. So I get my money back in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. I've always liked in these businesses to try to get your money back in 1 year, but at Dot
Mm.
Club, it's probably about a two
Yeah.
year.
Go ahead, Gary.
Yeah, our goal is to try to get our money back after 1 year. The reality is, as I kind of mentioned before, they most likely are already using a product, which means you've got a bunch of data you need to transition over from one system to the other. And um, from my perspective, I have a belief that you just have to keep lowering the barrier to entry for a user to jump. So every obstacle you put in their way is a reason for them to say no. So if you charge them a setup fee, or you charge them to move data over, at least in my space, because again, since it's public sector, they have fixed budgets. So they have money allocated for this, but they only have so much. So if you start saying, well, I have to move all this data over, so I have to charge you this much up front, and a lot of our competitors do that, we don't. So we kind of take that on as an acquisition cost. I mean, obviously, there's the cost of just farming and calling people and so forth. But at the end of the day, our biggest acquisition cost is actually the transferal cost. What it costs us to move someone over from another system, or if it's manually, they've got this in spreadsheets, and we have to now take it and put it into the system. We that eats up a lot of our first year costs. But the
That's
reality
going to
is,
cost you that
three
digitization process, that
yeah,
right there. And if I could just pause there for a minute, I really appreciate.
Sorry, Asia, could you just give us 1 second? Gary, did you want to finish your point and then Asia? And then we'll go down to
so
Ayuka.
so the reality is that most of our customers are signing a minimum 3 year contract, sometimes five. We've got a couple of 7 years, but 3 years is kind of the going rate. So yes, that first year, a lot of their cost or their revenue is eaten in cost in transitioning them over. But the reality is, we know we have at least 2 years of guaranteed revenue. Plus, once they're in, if they're happy, they just stay. So that continues on and on. And our cost to keep a customer on is substantially lower. Once we've put them in the system, um, uh, we don't have a lot of costs. The support costs are pretty low. The reality in our business is that one, it's a requirement. They have to have this because of OSHA. But people aren't generally using this system a lot unless there's emergency. So it's not like we've got a ton of traffic, but the system has to be there and has to be available when someone needs it. So our costs from a infrastructure perspective are all around having an infrastructure that will stay up. So we've got multiple locations that do DNS rerouting and all this stuff to make sure that the system is always available 24/7. That's our cost. But as in support costs and user costs, they're generally low. Once they're in the system, they may add some new SDSs a year, but our cost to maintain a customer is low after our initial cost. So the second, third year, and future years, our profit is very high on every customer, whereas our first year profit may be very low.
Sounds good. Asia, as promised, I'll let you go one time, but I do keep it brief because we have 5 more people who are on stage. We want to ask questions or have some comments. I did turn off the hand raising, so we won't be adding any more people to the audience. But Asia, real quick.
I just hope you'd be talking about RFPs a little bit. That would be helpful from my perspective and for the idea that you're presenting as far as these contracts that are requiring 5 to 7 years from maybe a school district. But in the first year, you're going to be paying a lot more money on the digitization process. And that's a whole nother company that doesn't seem in, that's great. So I appreciate that insight. So will you be talking about RFPs in a sense? And also the second question is, how can the NFT artists or artists that are creating NFTs benefit from this model, and what are some of what advice would you have for this demographic? Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Let's start with the RFP tricks. Like how do you win your RFPs, Peter and Gary, and then maybe we'll
Yeah.
open up to the entire. I don't want to go into the NFT realm right now, and we don't have a lot of time left, and we haven't covered building of the platform and other things. So let's hold off on the NFT question. But Gary, go ahead.
Yeah, so RFPs, tricks. I mean, if you can build a relationship with the customer before they have to go to RFP, that's actually a great space to be in, because typically once an RFP goes out, then your contact points are very close in what you can do. But if you can build that initial relationship, a lot of times they will actually come to you and ask for direction of, well, what kind of things should I ask for in an RFP? And you load those questions and you give them questions that point directly to you. That's a great strategy if you can get that. Obviously, those are rare, but when that happens, that helps you at least guide what questions may get into that RFP when it does come out.
Oh, that's excellent.
Some
Thank
of the
you.
tips, yeah, some of the tips and tricks we use is, since we are public sector focused, a lot of times, if there is an incumbent, we can actually find out who it is. Uh, uh, Freedom of information, especially when you get to counties and so forth, those contracts are available. It takes some legwork, but if you can find out what the contract is, how much it was before, who was in, you can then really guide your answers to differentiate yourself from the incumbent. Yes, there's going to be others, but the incumbent probably has the best chance to stay in. So you need to really differentiate yourself from the incumbent. So if you can figure out who the incumbent is, that's great. It doesn't hurt to ask. The worst thing they can say is no. So I will always ask, do you have someone using the system? Who's using it? Sometimes they'll answer it, sometimes they won't. But if you can figure out who it is, then you have a leg up, because you can direct your responses to differentiate yourself from the incumbent. Uh,
What was the
so
name of
that
that
that would be
person?
some of the points.
That
The
that
incumbent
title?
the incumbent is just the person that's currently
Okay.
that currently has the contract,
So have a
right? So who?
relationship with them as well. Sounds like
No,
what?
no, not with them, but a
Okay.
relationship with whoever the buyer is, right? So you
Oh.
have to know who
Oh.
you're
Okay.
selling to. So, like in my
What would
example,
their
let's say a
job
risk
title be?
Okay.
manager.
Well, I do want to
Okay.
move
Well,
on. I
again,
do want to move on.
it's very
Sorry,
different.
Gary
That's
and
my
Asia.
only question, is what would their job title be?
Thanks,
That's all.
Asia.
I'm sorry. Thank you so
Love the
much.
enthusiasm and all your emoticons. That's awesome.
Hey,
Peter,
Colin, I'll
any
just give you,
quick? Yeah.
yeah, I'll be quick. I love RFPs. I just think it's an opportunity to demonstrate the difference in the marketplace. We have two government clients, both gained through RFP, and the key for us on that really is to, at some point, get a chance for someone in the decision group to see what we've got and how it's different. But I just think it's a great opportunity because I know clearly there's a need, and they need to move systems or to renew a contract. I just love them because it gives you the opportunity and you've got an attentive audience.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, great. Let's move on because I know we're running out of time. We got 15 minutes left. We got 5 more people in the audience who have questions or comments. Aoko, am I pronouncing your name correctly?
Yes, hi.
Yeah, go ahead. Do you have a question or a comment about this subscription businesses, or a question for Peter and Gary and how they managed to actually do it?
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you for having me. I am a CPA from Canada. I was interested in the discussion because starting out, I provided accounting and tax services to startups and growing businesses. And then I felt the need from my clients that they want somebody to talk to on a regular basis, not just compliance. So I started the membership. It's not a membership, it's like a subscription. They know that they have access to a CPA when they need to, and we have regular calls. So now what I started doing is I opened the opportunity to other CPAs are who shows their availability. Usually they are CPAs who are in industry, they don't necessarily have a company. So they make themselves available through my company to help those businesses like on a regular basis. It's like a CFO service. So the question I have is like based on your experience in working with subscription based model, is that something you guys think we can scale? And also, we've been talking to developers and see how we can streamline the advice we give to them. That means usually they give us financial statements and we give them advice from scratch.
I've
So
got a
we are,
comment on that.
Go ahead,
I
Peter.
got, yeah, Aoka. So I just have a personal experience on that. That when we first started, we started using an accounting firm on a subscription basis. So for a fixed amount per month, this firm does our books. And as we've grown, that subscription's increased, but modestly. But this person just operates as if they're a member of our team, and we get what we need when we need it, and we have a fixed cost. So it's for them it's great because they can apply their skills elsewhere as well. Gives them some flexibility, and the owner of that business, I know that he's expanded his team to be able to support the growth of clients and support the growth of new subscribers fairly significantly. So by my own experience, I've seen it.
And I
And
would
it's even
concur.
in even in traditional spaces like doctors, for instance.
Yeah.
Michelle, you've had a little bit of exposure to this through your sister. This idea of you know subscriptions for your doctor. I mean, or higher level access. Can you talk to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's really cool. Typically, they refer to themselves as either a concierge service or a VIP service, and it works very well across professions, specifically for medical. Let's just assume you have insurance. But if many of these you can pay just even as low as $5,000 a year or $2,500 a year, and you get, very fast turnaround and first access to appointments. Can be immensely beneficial to particularly busy people, or if you're in need of just, quick healthcare all the time. So there are some very interesting professional services for people that feel like they need that extra level of care and a faster turnaround. Thank you.
Danish, do you have a thought or a comment on this topic?
Oh, thank you for letting me speak and great conversation. I just want to share my experience and maybe I think do have a question. My son is calling me. Maybe I'll come back again. Oh, he's gone. Sorry. So
Uh,
okay, yeah, he's calling. I'll come back again.
so
All right, great.
Colin,
Then, Ayuka?
yeah, it's
Yep.
Ayoko again. I just have a quick question. The other side of the subscription part we're working on right now is machine learning. We are trying to streamline the work and see if the machine can help give them a diagnostic or consulting before the CPAs look at it, or it can only be that for the people who don't want to pay that much. Do you guys feel like that's a viable solution?
Well, it's not only a viable solution. I invested in a company called Zendu, which does exactly what you're talking about. And was actually thinking about inviting Lil Roberts on to the show. She's done a number of shows with us, and she's developed a platform, an AI platform that fintech that connects with your bank accounts and can actually do a lot of the work in advance, and then it's cleaned up, and it's cleaned up after they do that AI, that analysis of the bank accounts. So I think you're onto something there. Check out Zendu. Type in AI accounting systems on Google. You'll probably see a few models. I don't know if anybody in Canada has really killed it, and I think there might be an opportunity for you there, or maybe reach out to Lil Roberts. Maybe he can partner with her on Zendu and bring it to
Uh,
Canada.
I'm just going
Michelle?
to throw this in there real quickly. When I said I worked at Walters Kluwer, I actually worked on very high end tax software, and there absolutely is AOCA. A place for that. And I think of it like, what we used to call it was diagnostic reports, but for tax planning purposes and alerts, I think you're on to something for sure.
May I?
Colin, can you say the name again? Zendu?
Zendu, so Xendoo. And Ron, we will
Okay.
get to you because you're gonna close our show, Ron.
Ron is the
Really great to
grand
see you again, Ron.
finale. Ron,
Exactly.
Wow,
prepare
But
yourself.
Danish, I know
what a
you were on the
privilege.
you were on
Prepare yourself.
exactly.
No pressure.
Danish, I know you were on the phone a minute ago. Are you able to talk now?
Yeah, I'll make it quick. So, 10 years ago, I started a tech education platform. Basically, it was a membership type of platform in the beginning because I wasn't like thinking about creating something like a subscription model. So the product that we have built is based on a community that kind of basically became pretty large online, like 70,000 members. So we created a product based on that. So I think one other thing that I kind of heard that, yeah, these two are very different if you're going to go into specifics, but some platforms can use both at the same time. For example, ours, yes, we have a membership run community, but we also use subscription inside that because of the services that we provide. So you can have a membership subscription, which is something that you guys can search around. So yes, this can happen, but you really have to understand your niche, your customer, and how the retention is the biggest key right here, which let's say for past 10 years we've been providing tech education. So how can you retain certain customers because that is so specific to their career now. And one of the things that I found that if your product is not talking back or not providing something like there's an automation going on, then it's super hard because in content creation or we create labs for systems for people to learn skills. These are hands-on labs using servers and technology. So if our product is not engaging our members, so first few years we found a big drop in our subscribers, or you can say members. So a lot of people just dropped after first year because they felt like, okay, what's my next step? There's not too much going on. So we picked on it in an early stage that we have to make our product automated, where it has to go back to these members and not become such a labor and manual job for our team to get engaged, because then you're looking to invest so much in labor, then your membership is not making too much sense because that break even is not happening. So once we did the automation, that is where we found a pretty big value in our own membership. And right now, of course, then you can go to that other models where you can just totally go to the B2B, where you can sell it to a college because you have a full platform in your ownership now. My question to Gary is this. This is a quick question, Gary. I know you are in the education space, and I think I asked this in the chat too. What is your preferred method if you don't know a customer? I know you said that you want to make a connection with them and then things becomes easier, but let's say you have, like, there's no connection, but you really want to get that B2B business. What is your preferred method, or the method that really worked for you in this business?
Yeah, so in fact, a lot of our customers we initially didn't have um, any type of contact with. So the great thing is we do get a lot of referrals, which is great. But when we're doing those cold contacts, I actually like to start with email. Just with our space, we're typically going after a health and safety person, a risk manager. Um, these people are generally very busy, right? They have a number of schools across their board, and they're dealing with emergencies, right? Like some kid fell, some teacher got hurt, some spill happened. So they're running around typically like a chicken with their head cut off. So a lot of times if you call them, they kind of get annoyed. So I actually like to start with email. And typically there are also a lot of followers. So once I get a school board in a state, I start using that, and I'll reach out and say, hey, X and Y school board just moved to our system. I'd love to talk to you and show you, uh, you know, uh, how we're different and how we improved what they're doing. And sometimes you won't get a response. To be honest, many times you don't, but you kind of go back to them. And a lot of times I'll just say, hey, if you've got an existing system, just let me know when it renews, and I won't bother you until then. A lot of times I get a response with that. And they'll come back and say, June 2024. Perfect. Now I know I'm going to be contacting you 6 months before. Um, if I'm not getting something that way, I may call the board and say, hey, I'm looking for who's responsible for safety data sheets, because a lot of times I may think it's the risk manager, but it's not. It's the maintenance person or the custodian who in this board handles it. And a lot of times they'll tell you, and then I'll contact them and say, hey, I was speaking to such and such, and they gave me your name. So a lot of times you're really just trying to get a response in some way, right? And for me, if I get a response with a renewal date, that's gold, right? That's gold, because then I know when I should be bugging them. Because if I'm bugging them 2 years before, they're not interested. They're going to ignore you no matter how hard you try. But if I can make it easy to just say, hey, just tell me what date and I won't bug you till then, a lot of times they come back to me.
Thank you. That was
That's awesome.
really awesome tip. The second one, I really appreciate it.
No problem.
All right, we also have Ron Gatt on stage here as well. I think you're a bit of an expert at subscription models and raving fan. So, Ron Gatt, did you want to
Yeah,
share
yeah. I
some
wanna.
stuff with us?
Yeah,
Yeah.
first of all, I wanted to thank you, Colin, Michelle, Jeffrey, Gary, Peter, Asia, Jasmine, Ayoko, Denish, and Braun, sending flowers on this special Friday to
Haha.
Michelle, Asia, Jasmine, and Ayoko. And yeah, I have a comment and a question. From my perspective, we're working on a couple things. One is data as a service, and I really appreciated how Jasmine indicated the differences and the different business models. And I'm also working on a community, let's say, as a service or community platform. Utilizing no code and low code platforms such as Bubble and Software, And I wanted to indicate to Ayoku that right now you mentioned you're looking to add AI and machine learning, and you can add that via no code and low code platforms as well. If you look it up, I'll help you around as well. But my question is as follows: for the NFT or artist side, we're looking to launch within the next month a community. A community platform, right? Let's call it a connection platform where we don't want to monetize, meaning I don't want to charge artists and the community members. How would you think about monetizing such a platform going forward? Where let's say the initial end user, and I think Danish, maybe I don't know if you how you structured it when you began your membership platform subscription platform in terms of monetization initially. Again, my current situation, I don't want to monetize them initially.
Yeah, not too dissimilar to Startup Club. We have 850,000 members. It's free, and we don't make a profit on this club, but we do want to ensure it's sustainable. Does anybody here, maybe Danish or someone on the panel, want to talk to this
Well,
community, Jeff?
yeah, Colin, one way I've seen free membership communities monetize is with events. So I've been a member of several groups where the membership is free, but every quarter they might have an event that's only available to members. So there's some exclusivity to the event, but then they do charge for the event. And so they can monetize through the events, yet still maintain membership and many year-long membership benefits that are free to those members. And then only those members who want to participate in the events can pay for the events.
And I know we had
Yeah.
Procter and Gamble and QuickBooks sponsor Startup Club. So we're looking for more
Yeah.
sponsors for Startup Club because if you have the members and you can get the message out, sponsorship will follow.
Yeah, I think
All
I
right,
will
great.
I will
Danish,
I will agree
and
with
then Ron.
Jeffrey in this case. When we started our community, because there was a need, so we started from just basic YouTube. That was one of the best for us. So then we converted that YouTube community into a free membership on the website. Then that's where we started adding more values to those same members, because YouTube people will get distracted on the website. We told people that, look, you cannot get distracted with this. But when we grew so much that we started to pay a lot of money even just to maintain our website, because we were doing some development, not just putting content on the website, but we're actually creating a whole LMS system for free. And that's where the community found a very big value into us, that look, you guys are real. For many years we've been doing that, and we straight up reach out to the same community and say, look, without money we just cannot achieve the bigger goal, because we really want to take this education, this technical skills education, into colleges. So would you help us in doing that? And we were pretty much transparent into them. Every single thing that we have done in this platform for 10 years, we will even show our maps of development of, this is how we develop this product, and this is what the outcome of this. So our members became kind of like a mission driving force behind us, where now a college is approaching us without zero marketing. A college approach to us and say, hey, we need your help. And that is why I asked Gary that we are at the position where now we are in more of the corporate side. So now we're going into that, hey, now let's go ahead and go for that, our own way of marketing, because we already got a lot in our bag to show that we can do a lot of changes. So that's how we started, Ron. It takes a lot of time to build a community, I would say, because it's like a brand. It's like, if you don't have that reviews, if you don't have that outcome where people are going to be vouching for you, then yeah, it's pretty hard to run something like that. But I mean, everybody have a different way to do this.
It's awesome. As promised, Ron, you're the last. You're going to close it out. Do you have some
The
thought
second
for us?
run. The second run.
Take it away, Ron.
Thank you. I wanted to comment on the approach that's most attractive to me right now. I'm very struck by how, if you give people something free, a massive free sample, I want to take that to the limit All my ventures have been learning systems, one sort or another. And let me relate this free sample approach to what Jeffrey was talking about. Jeffrey, the subscriptions you referred to of coffee and socks, there's a significant variable cost there to deliver the coffee and the socks. But in a learning system, once you build the learning system online, you could add 1 million people at essentially no cost. So, what would be the ideal subscription plan there? I think it's the following. I'm about to try this out with a couple of the ventures that I've invested in and that I'm mentoring and building. We're going to offer the services free indefinitely, not just a trial month, but for as long as the person wants to use it free. We're going to make the fairness argument that at some point, when they find that the profitability to them has gotten so outlandish that they don't feel right not paying for it anymore, that they then start to pay a monthly subscription. I think it's the massive free sample of all time. I believe in it. Why shouldn't you prove your value before someone starts paying? And then as many people as want to, because there's no cost of goods, as in Jeffrey's socks and coffee, and many people as want to can try. They can use it as long as they want. It's not a burden on the company. And then if it is massively powerful, they'll start paying. That's the model I'm about to play with. I don't know that anybody is doing it, and I'd be very interested in anybody who knows.
I have
Ron?
one
Oh,
comment on
go
that,
ahead,
Ron.
Peter. Yeah, I had
Yeah,
two.
no, I think it's really interesting. You're right on that far spectrum of something that we're really starting to work on is like the notion of product led growth. It's like prove the value first, then ask for the money.
Bing,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. So try versus demo and all this stuff. There's been all sorts of stuff online. I've been reading up on it recently. Lots of companies are driving it. So good luck. Like people being willing to pay when you don't force it. I don't know how that'll work. It'll be interesting to see. But I'm a big believer in this whole notion of give them value before you demand them pay you money. So
And
it's very
But
interesting.
yeah,
I'm going to say
I
to the
think I agree with you, Peter. Ron, the one suggestion I would make, I love
yeah,
the idea, but I would set it up right up front so people know. Because if you wait, give it free for all, and then try to introduce the idea. Now, if you like what it, please pay us. I would start right from day one saying this is free, but it's a donation based. As you find value, please pay us what you think it's worth. And I think it was Radiohead. I
Hmm.
might be wrong, but who put out an album like that? They put out an album. The downloads are free, and they basically said, "Pay us whatever you want." For this album. Some people paid nothing. Some people paid $5. Some people paid $500.
indeed.
But if you didn't say that up front, more people would just take it for free and never switch over to that donation. Because the hardest jump in business is going from zero to $1, from free to paying anything.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I almost wonder, like, if you look at Wikipedia and sort of their experience, like they rely on donations. You never expected to pay, but if you get a lot of value out of it, which we all do, um, maybe $50 here and there is worth it to make sure that stays as a vibrant community. It's
indeed.
very interesting.
Well, you've given us a lot of food for thought, Ron, on Startup Club because we are in that mode as well. This has been an incredible hour, but I don't know about you, Peter, Gary, Jeff, Michelle. I feel like we didn't cover the cost of building the SaaS platform and the
Yeah.
investors and investment, and, setting up that investor communication about the number of years it takes to break even. And I feel like we have only covered half the topic. And I don't know, Michelle, is it possible to do another show next week, I don't know if we have, or do we have that booked yet, Michelle?
I think we should jump right in there and set up to continue this conversation next week.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and get more into the nitty gritty about building the platform. So let's do that. I don't know, Gary and Peter, if you're available, but if you are, that would be great. And Ron and Danish and all your and Jasmine and Ayoko and Asia, you're all welcome back next week as well to come on stage and let's finish the story. Let's see if we can't figure it out because I'll tell you this, it's not easy. To build a software platform, it could cost millions of dollars. But I know that Peter and Gary have figured out ways to do it that doesn't cost millions of dollars. And it's a very challenging business, but when you get it, ultimately, it generates huge wealth when you actually sell it one day. And we should talk about that more next week as well. So thank you very much for being on the Serial Entrepreneur Club Hour. If you don't already know this, we are a podcast as well now, and you can go to your favorite podcast channel and search for Serial Entrepreneur Club. Feel free to share this room on the recording or check out the podcast and leave us a nice review if you felt you got value. Thank you very much, and everyone on stage, really appreciate it. Really shows you the community of Clubhouse and what when you come together, how you can really ideate and come up with some pretty cool thoughts.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a wonderful weekend. Be well.
Appreciate everybody. Everybody, thank you.
Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you.
Well done,
Bye bye.
moderators.